All right, great. We got 9:49. We got 10 minutes. I invited Kevin Crawford here to talk about VTSI. VTSI had earnings on, what was it, Thursday? Kevin, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, Thursday sounds right. Thursday or Friday morning.
Right, great. All right, there you can see the chart. I haven't thrown my DMAs on it yet. While you're talking, I'll add some more to the chart. But yeah, we've had three earnings reports in like 3.5 weeks to catch up. And I'd like to hear your perspective now that it's all over and we're caught up. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think from a top line perspective, the company has grown quite a bit. They ended Q4 with $24.5 million revenue run rate, or trailing 12 months. Q1 and Q2 were both higher than historic, but we're pretty close to what I expected. Unfortunately, came in a little bit lower than what I expected. Maybe I had higher hopes, but overall, good numbers. From a valuation perspective, expenses were up quite a bit, which ate into their bottom line. Reported 12-cent GAAP EPS in Q1 and Q2 combined. Both quarters adjusted EBITDA positive, all that sort of thing. From a bookings perspective, last we heard when they reported in November was an 11 million quarter that kind of came out of the blue. There were some large orders that I thought maybe could bump them up to 8 or 9, 10 million even, in a great case, and they came out with 11. And then they followed that up in Q1 with 8.5 million bookings. Q3 was 11, Q4 was 8.5 million, then 6.5 in Q1, and Q2 was a bit disappointing at 3.5 million bookings, and that's their lowest booking since like late 2018, I think. But overall, their backlog is still looking strong at something like $16.5 million, which is higher than I think going back to 2020, and obviously revenue numbers have been great. So from a book of business perspective, they're doing well. They're growing. CEO always likes to talk about now 16 consecutive years of growing revenue and growing the business. But unfortunately, it hasn't always led to significantly increasing EPS. So I think there's some good and bad things going on, or not necessarily bad, but there's good and less good things that are going on. Cash has been, they burned about $5 million in cash over the last few quarters since their raise. Some of that going to their new building and additional hiring, but all things considered, they're growing.
Okay, yeah, great. I look at the at StoryTrading, I'm looking at technicals, catalysts, sentiment, and fundamentals, and from a catalyst perspective, certainly I like that they're caught up, right? They're caught up on all the earnings reports now. From a sentiment perspective, I think there's probably some overhang there in terms of the fact that they were behind on their earnings report, and there was that question about the NASDAQ listing, at least to people who weren't very close with it. So, you got the sentiment and catalyst, and then the technicals here. It looks good to me, right? On a chart perspective, I like it. I don't know that there's this 200 DMAs here at 580. It would be great if it broke it and went above it. So my question for you from a fundamental perspective is, given everything that you've just told us, how do you think about fair value here based on the latest report?
Yeah, I think there's, I guess you can, if you value it on earnings and EBITDA and all that stuff, like I said, their operating expenses have grown quite a bit. So even though they've seen some top line growth, pretty significant top line growth in the last few quarters, their earnings hasn't really grown with it. So from a valuation perspective, you can maybe say if they continue this rate, they get to $30 million revenue, continue at like say 55% margins, which they've done in Q1 and Q2, but didn't do in Q3 and Q4 last year. Maybe they are trading at like a 6 to 10 EV to EBITDA. And if you read some of the some of the analyst reports and all that stuff, maybe some of them project some getting up to trading at 13 times EBITDA. You see some competitors which are much bigger in the space trading at 20 plus. So they're not expensive by any means, but they're also a bit lumpy, a bit smaller, bit more inconsistent. So maybe there is some discount that they should be trading at. And I don't know if 6 to 10 is where it should be necessarily, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Okay, cool. And then I'd like also your perspective on this co-CEO situation, because that's also a sentiment issue. You know, in our community, there's been that question from an activist investor about management. And I've been looking at this kind of from an outside perspective. And when I see, oh, this co-CEO steps up, I'm like, well, that can't be sustainable. Maybe this is just a transition to Bob stepping aside, is what I'm seeing from a real distance. You're closer in management. I know you've met with them. I'm wondering what your perspective now is and the dynamics with the new guy. And I don't know if you've talked to him, but you probably have your finger on the pulse of this better than I do. But love to hear what you're thinking about what's going on there with the new guy.
Yeah, I think I don't know necessarily what their long-term plans are, and Bob and John Gibbons both kind of talked about it on the call of their sharing responsibilities of pretty much all things in the business. So it's all kind of confusing to me too. But I think when I talked to Bob recently, he kind of gave off the impression that John Gibbons is quite well respected in the industry. I think he said there were quite a number of companies, more than 10 companies that were all trying to vie for him to come work for them after he left Bohemia. He ended up taking a board seat for Virtra, and my kind of take is that that was kind of their way of locking him in until something happened with Bohemia and he could step into a larger role. There's a bit reading into that, but he joined us on the board over a year and a half ago now. So I think there were always bigger plans than just sitting on the board. And yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, I think the surprising part has been the military revenue they brought in the last few quarters. I think they said something like more than $5 million just in the last two quarters alone, and that was maybe something higher than like 3x all of last year or something like that. So they're doing some stuff in the military market. I haven't really been able to peg exactly what programs they're part of and where they're getting this revenue from. One of my concerns on the military side is in 2021, they were talking about how we're involved in this military program and other stuff. A couple of them actually. And in the last few conference calls, they've used a bit more reserved language of we're attempting to win, we're attempting to integrate into this military market, but it doesn't sound like they are actively participating. And from my research, the U.S. Army has three different programs that have like a use case for drop-in recoil kits or simulation stuff in general that I think Virtra could in theory be part of. But we haven't heard them actually announce any contract wins. And like I said, they're not talking like they're part of any programs. So I do have some reservations about their current involvement. I think all of these programs are kind of subject to change at any moment. Maybe they can, meaning they're still in prototyping phase. And maybe Virtra comes in as they get closer to production and implement, and they bring in their drop-in recoil kits at that point rather than any big orders this soon. So there's a lot of, I'm less excited about it, but I'm still equally as hopeful as I was. There's still a lot of need for drop-in recoil kits. The Soldier Virtual Trainer Program put it in their RFI that we want drop-in recoil kits, and these are a requirement. But then that award came and went, and no PR or anything from Virtra. We saw their competitor Embarrass as part of one of the winning bids. We don't know what exactly they're doing. I think maybe their CEO came on, posted on LinkedIn and said they're doing something with augmented reality. I don't know if that's augmented reality plus they're dropping recoil kits or just headsets, which they already have. So no idea, but all I know is Virtra is not involved at the moment, or not saying they're involved. So I have some reservations, but on the federal side, and I think there's still just as much opportunity as there always has. Tons of fund the police and training and all that stuff. So there's hope, but it might take a little bit to play out.
Great. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, as always, for your awesome contributions to the community. You're a real asset, and everyone here got a better understanding of VTSI tonight. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to help. Feel
Great,
free if
thank
anyone wants
you.
to reach out with questions, though.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sharp Shy City, CHICITY. Otherwise, I'm in the WhatsApp groups on StoryTrading, VTSI, and some of the other WhatsApp rooms we have floating around.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin.